judge and raise your right hand. Stand.
Stand.
Yes.
Do you swear or affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you'll give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, have a seat, talk into the microphone.
Ma'am, go ahead and state your name for the record, please.
Gabrielle Pickle.
And in October of 2021, how were you employed?
Could you rephrase the
In
question?
October of 2021, how were you employed?
Sorry. As to type of employment or my job title? I'm sorry.
Were you employed on the set of Rust?
Yes.
What was your position?
Line producer.
What is a line producer? Please let the jurors know what that is, what you do.
Basically the project manager, specifically focusing on the budget and managing the budget.
And did you have conversations with Ms. Gutierrez about getting what I'm going to refer to as additional armorer days?
Yes.
And can you explain to the jury how was her employment set up in terms of armorer days and prop assistant days? Let these folks know how you had it arranged.
So we had originally, it all depended on the schedule, and we had originally scheduled 5 days with blanks on set, and so we had 5 armor days. And then as the schedule changed due to other departments and us filming, it expanded, meaning that we would need to split up some scenes and whatnot, and so it became 7 armor days, I believe. And then she requested different ones for different reasons, and I believe by the end of it we had 10 armor days, if I remember correctly. And
so let me stop you. So when she asked you for additional armorer days, you gave them to her.
yes,
Did you actually double the number of armorer days that she was originally scheduled for?
yes,
So I think you just testified that she had 10 armorer days total. Is that right?
that is to the best of my recollection, yes.
As of October 21st, 2021, how many days of filming had even happened?
Sorry, this is gonna,
Yeah, no,
Take
take
a
your time.
minute.
And if you need to see a calendar, we can provide
that would
you.
actually be very helpful.
Sure.
It was 2 weeks and 2 days, I believe.
Is that 21? Of course. All right.
Yes, 2 weeks and 2 days. So a total of 12. We were on our 12th shooting day.
So out of 12 days of filming, you gave her 10 armorer days, correct?
I believe a couple of those were training days, which would have been right prior to shooting.
Okay. And did Ms. Gutierrez ask you for additional training days?
There was an incident where she requested training that would involve Brady, which was a minor who did not fire weapons in the movie, and I denied that for insurance purposes. But that was the only one that we denied.
Did Ms. Gutierrez ask you specifically, well, let me rephrase. Did Ms. Gutierrez tell you that she needed additional training time with Alec Baldwin?
Not phrased like that. Alec was, in the question around Brady, Alec was going to be present because their characters in the script were so often together, but it was specifically for Brady to learn, to learn. The request was not because Alec needed more time.
It was because Brady wanted to do some gun training.
Yes.
And you said no because of insurance reasons?
Yes.
And what went into that decision? What were the insurance concerns that you had?
We would have had to inform insurance, and then we would have had to pay a little bit more money, just
And-
because the minor element.
Because he's a child,
Yes.
right? Okay. At any point in time, did you express concerns to Ms. Gutierrez that she was leaving Firearms unattended?
I did, in an email, and then in person.
Do you recall the date?
I do not.
Would seeing a copy of it refresh your memory?
Yes, it would.
May I approach? I will, yes.
I'm sorry.
No, do you need
Eyeballs.
glasses?
No, October 14th.
Okay. I'm sorry.
October 14th is the date.
Did that refresh your memory?
It did. Thank you.
And did you suggest to Ms. Gutierrez a way of remedying the problem of leaving Firearms unattended?
Yes.
What did you suggest?
Some type of logging system? Check in, check out?
And did she respond to you?
She did respond via email.
And did she agree to a check-in, check-out log system?
No.
Why not, if she told you?
She said that it was too complicated to do in between scenes. And they had a system that they were working with, and I'm trying to recollect, that was end of day, I believe.
Okay. Did you then have an in-person meeting with Ms. Gutierrez?
Yes.
And who was present at that meeting?
Myself, Brian Norvell, who was the production designer, Hannah, and I believe Roe was there for part of it, the UPM, and then she stepped away to handle something else.
And why would Mr. Norvell be there?
Because as production designer, he's over everything that is the look of the film, and that includes armor.
And did Ms. Gutierrez express concerns about being torn between armorer duties and prop assistant duties?
Can you rephrase?
At any point in time, did Ms. Gutierrez indicate to you that she did not have enough time to focus on her armorer duties because she was busy doing props?
No. The reverse would be true. So she focused more on her armorer duties and less on her props duties.
And did that create an issue for you? Let me ask you, did you ask Ms. Gutierrez to spend less time on armorer duties and more time supporting props?
On props days, yes.
And when you say props days, what do you mean?
Meaning where she was not acting as armor. They were not the armor days that we just referenced.
And in the meeting that you had with Ms. Gutierrez, did you offer her additional support so that she could accomplish her tasks for both jobs?
Yes.
What additional support did you offer?
It was a collaboration of offers between production and the art department.
So my question is, what support was being offered to her?
Admin support, organizational, all the paperwork, to try to take as much off of her plate as possible so that she could really focus on the set duties.
After the meeting where you offered support, did Ms. Gutierrez again tell you that she was spread too thin?
No, we seem to have a plan to move forward.
Did Ms. Gutierrez ever express concerns to you that Mr. Baldwin wasn't paying attention during his firearm training that she conducted with him?
Not that I recall.
In terms of the I apologize, I lost my train of thought. I'm over 50 and it's getting late in the day. Is there a difference in pay for armorer and prop assistant?
Yes.
Which pays more?
Armor.
And did Ms. Gutierrez also express, perhaps not concerns, but desires to you that her armorer days be something that would be recognized by the union?
So she and I had had a conversation early on in her hire about the production once we had wrapped, and I can't remember the exact procedure, but basically writing down her days to submit them to the union to count toward her qualification. I don't remember it being armor specific. I thought it was all days, but that is my memory.
Okay. And do you know what union she was attempting to become a part of?
It was the California local union. I cannot remember the number off the top of my head, the number of their specific local.
Are you a member of that union?
I am not.
Do you know whether or not you have to be a resident of California to be a member of that union?
I do not.
All right. I'm going to show you what I have marked as States Exhibit 148. Let me confer. May I approach?
Yes.
Do you recognize that document?
Yeah, it's a union start. Sorry.
Okay.
Yes.
Is this document signed by Ms. Gutierrez?
Yes.
Is this document also signed by you?
Yes.
Is one of the purposes of this document to seek reimbursement for her armorer expenses?
Yes.
I move for the admission of States Exhibit 148.
Yeah, I think the document is still hearsay.
What document is it? And council approach?
Let me shift gears real quick and then we'll go back. On the days that there was not blank gunfire on the set of Rust, were there prop guns being used by actors that were in fact real guns?
I don't know.
Okay. I appreciate that. Rather than introduce the exhibit, have you reviewed this exhibit?
Yes.
And was it submitted to you by Ms. Gutierrez?
It was submitted to my team, who then submitted to me by Ms. Gutierrez.
Okay. And you signed it?
Yes, I did.
And what was the first item that Ms. Gutierrez was requesting reimbursement for? Do you recall?
Something called an inertia puller.
Thank you. Let me just review my notes real quick. I'll pass the witness.
Cross-exam.
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Pickle, good afternoon. I wanted to ask you first on the hiring process for Ms. Gutierrez-Reed.
Mm-hmm.
Was this a collaborative process with the producers?
It was.
Okay. Did you have input into that process, into hiring her?
Yes.
Okay. Ultimately, were you the one that made the decision to hire her?
No. I made the offer.
Okay. Who made the actual decision?
I mean, I would say it was a collaborative decision from the
Okay.
top down. Everybody had to sign off.
And so part of that offer process was that she would be hired as a key props assistant and an armor, correct?
Yes.
And ma'am, you've testified today that you had allocated 10 armor days to her?
I believe so.
Okay. And as part of that film, how many total days of filming do you recall were there going to be to complete the film?
We had not decided at this point. It was, I believe, 22 or 23, if I remember correctly.
Okay, and I'm not holding you to a specific date, but it was 22 or 23 in your memory.
Yes.
Okay, so out of that 22 or 23, approximately less than half Ms. Gutierrez-Reed was going to be in an armor position.
Correct.
Okay. Now, by the time of the shooting incident on October 21st, I think you had said there had been approximately 12 days?
12 filming days.
12
yes.
filming days, okay. Do you know how many training days had happened by that point?
I don't recall. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Do you recall a training where Ms. Gutierrez-Reed conducted for actors and some of the producers that
Yes.
involved? Okay. And do you recall how many people were at that training?
Total?
Yes.
I do not.
Yeah.
I know there were we had producers. I was there for the first training, and then I had to leave for something else. There were multiple actors that were trained that day. I would say a handful of crew that were there, as well as actors.
Okay. And so just in terms of numbers, can you tell the jury just an idea, if you have a ballpark, how many people?
I would say between 7 and 12
Okay.
at any given time.
And was Ms. Gutierrez-Reed, in your memory, training them all together, or were they grouped, or how did that training work?
She started off with some general training, and then worked with them kind of individually to figure out, because they had to figure out the right weapons for their characters and things, and so she worked them through that, and also their level of comfort with different types of blanks, and so that was more individual, but there were multiple people there at a time.
Do you know approximately how long that training was?
No, I was only there for probably an hour.
Okay. Did you see Mr. Baldwin there being trained?
He was not at that training. No, he was not in the state at that point.
Okay. And ma'am, do you know if he at one point was able to attend some type of training with Ms. Gutierrez-Reed?
He did.
Did you witness that training?
I did not.
Okay. So you don't have any personal knowledge of observing it, but you do know that it happened.
I know that it was on the schedule.
Okay.
That is the extent of my personal knowledge. We coordinated with multiple departments to make sure that could happen.
Okay. Do you know whether Ms. Gutierrez-Reed had requested to do cross-draw training with Mr. Baldwin?
I don't recall that at all.
Okay. Do you know whether Mr. Baldwin ever had cross-draw training on set?
I have no idea.
Okay. With regard to the duties that she was performing, I think you said she was focusing more on her armor duties. Is that right?
Yes.
And do you recall telling her that she was hired in both positions and that she needed to be focusing more on her props duties?
On props days, yes.
Okay. And those props days were delineated in the schedule, correct?
Yes.
Now on those
Or
props
by
days,
the schedule.
I'm sorry?
I just wanted to reword that. They were delineated by the schedule. They did not necessarily appear on the schedule.
Okay. Would some of those days include use of weapons on those props days?
The difference was blank firing. So if there were blanks present, then that was an armor day.
Okay, but if there were not blanks present, but there's firearms present, would you agree with me that that's still an armor function?
I mean, it was a Western, so everything that the actors touched is considered a prop, and that was where we had the line between like props and armor.
Okay, well, so did you consider the firearms to be the props?
Some of them were.
Okay. Which ones were props versus not props?
I cannot speak to that.
Okay.
It's not my area of expertise.
Okay, but at least your understanding was at least some of the firearms were props.
Yes.
Now, was that clearly delineated to Ms. Gutierrez-Reed as to which firearms were props and which ones were under armor?
That information more came from her because she was the expert in weaponry, not
Okay.
myself.
Okay, was that written down somewhere, which firearms would be which?
I don't believe so. Not to my knowledge.
Okay. And then, with regard to non-blank days, were those all prop days?
Yes.
Okay. So if there weren't blanks being fired, even if there are firearms being used, those are props days.
Correct.
Okay. Now, didn't you attend and witness some of the trainings that Ms. Gutierrez-Reed had done? You said you spent an hour at the one.
Mm-hmm.
And were you impressed at how she handled the training?
I was.
Okay.
I learned a lot.
Did you have any issues or anybody come to you and complain about it?
About the training?
Yes.
No.
Okay. The date of the incident, are you familiar with Video Village?
Yes.
Were you aware that the day this happened, the Video Village went down?
Can you further expand on that?
Yes, that Video Village was not operating the day that the shooting occurred.
Is this due to the camera delay? Is that what you're referencing?
Well, I'm just, actually, I was going to ask you first if you knew about that Video Village going down.
No.
Okay. But you said there was a camera delay.
Mm-hmm.
Was that because, were you aware the camera crew had walked off the day before?
Yes.
And were you aware they had come back that next day?
Yes.
Did you have any interaction with any of them?
Yes.
Did you end up calling the police?
On them?
Yes,
No.
for any reason. Okay, so was it a pleasant interaction?
Not particularly.
Okay.
But I was just there to make sure they took their stuff, and then the production rentals stayed where they were.
Okay. How long were they on set that next day?
I do not remember. As short a time as we could manage for them
Okay.
to pack up their gear.
Okay, you were trying to get them off as quick as you could.
Well, we needed to start our day, so we were trying to, move that first and then get rolling.
Did that delay the start of that day?
It did.
Do you know approximately how long that was delayed?
Hours?
So at the time you all were able to start the day and start the various things you're going to do, you're already hours behind.
Yes.
Okay. So was there a general perception of trying to move quick that day, or
No,
get things done?
we had to replace the camera team, and we all know that takes time to get new people into the rhythm. We had been meeting with different people in charge to figure out what we were moving to other days, and how we were going to absorb basically what could have been a half-day loss at that point. So there wasn't rushing. All the other departments had all of those hours to do whatever they saw fit. The only people that were really intensely focused was the new camera team, trying to learn the equipment and get up to speed.
Do you know whether on that day Ms. Gutierrez Reed had already used her armor days?
I know that day was an armor day.
But do you know if she had already used her armor days that had been allocated?
No, that one was also approved.
Okay. Because you were on day 12, and I'm just wondering, because you had said you gave her 10.
They weren't necessarily consecutive.
Okay. Okay. But you don't know how many she had used up to that day?
I do not. No.
At one point, didn't you tell Ms. Gutierrez Reed that she wasn't going to be allocated any more training days? But I think you actually worded it training days.
I did. I misspelled in the text message. Yes.
Yes, and it was a text with her, and this was you remember approximately what day that was?
I do not.
And why did you tell her there would be no more training days, is what you were trying to say?
At that point, we didn't need them. And she and I had communicated since the very beginning that we wanted to keep track of all of her armor days. And so we texted back and forth fairly often. I mean, every few days.
And do you recall what the context was, why she was asking for more training days?
So the specific instance that I remember was her asking for a training day with Alec and our minor lead, Brady. And that was the one that I said no to, due to it being a minor.
And I just want to ask you if I showed you a text, would it refresh you as to the date that this occurred? That this exchange occurred?
Yes.
Okay. May I approach?
I think I have it in front of me.
Okay, if you can read this, ma'am.
Sorry, there are 2 dates on this page. I can read. October 15th, 2021.
And do you recall getting that text or having this text exchange with Ms. Gutierrez Reed?
Mhm.
I'm sorry.
Once we get
Oh,
here,
yes.
you're going to keep asking him questions.
Do I?
No, he needs to retrieve that from you. Are you going to retrieve that from her?
Yes. Once she, are you finished reading it now?
Yes.
Okay. Do you recall having that text exchange?
Yes.
Ms. Gutierrez Reed? Okay. And that was in regard to the training of Alec Baldwin.
Mm-hmm.
And do you remember Ms. Gutierrez Reed saying she's on day 6, and this would be day 7 of 8 of her training days, her armory days. Do you recall that?
Mm-hmm.
Does that change your opinion as to how many armor days she had, that she had 8 as opposed to 10?
No, I believe her armor days, and we can check the pay stubs, but I believe she had the 10 armor days. It may have been that 8 were filming days, and 2 were training days. I do not recall the exact split, but I do recall it being 10 days.
If you are able to, can you pull those pay stubs?
I don't have access to them anymore.
Okay. Okay.
That would be.
So we've also have you under subpoena. You're aware of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so we may recall you in our case.
Counsel approach.
And ma'am, if your memory is correct, it's correct. But if your memory is 10 days.
That is my memory.
Okay. And I'm just trying to figure out what you remember. With regard to the accidental discharges that occurred on set,
Mm-hmm.
did you become aware of those?
I was made aware of one. It was reported to the UPM, Roe Walters, and she informed me that it had happened, and I asked her to investigate, and she did, and reported back that she and Hannah had a conversation, and she felt very good with the precautions that were in place.
Okay, so you said you were aware of one. Do you know which one this involved?
It was one reported by Lane Looper via text message to Roe. I don't know if that's in evidence.
Who is Lane Looper?
He was one of the camera crew.
Okay. So, as I understand, Mr. Looper was raising a safety issue through a text, and that went to Roe Walters?
Yes.
And then that was investigated. Then what occurred as a result of that, if anything?
It was investigated. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I do not recall.
Now, are you now aware there were 2 accidental discharges?
I found that out afterwards, yes.
When did you learn that?
Maybe 3 or 4 days after the incident.
Do you know whether there was any investigation after you learned of that second one?
Could you clarify?
Yes. Do you know whether there was any investigation done after you learned of the second accidental discharge? Did anybody look into it, to your knowledge?
I do not know.
Okay. Did you do anything personally once you learned about the second one? Did you do anything to investigate that?
Everything was shut down at that point. I found out through other attorneys asking me questions. This was not a set discovery or
Okay.
on-set discovery.
And I was wondering, because the discharges were the 16th, and I think you said 3 or 4 days later.
Sorry. The discharge that I was made aware of via row, was the only one that I knew about during filming. The others I found out about 3 or 4 days after the 21st.
I see. Okay.
Once everything had shut down and everybody was trying to figure out what was going on.
Okay.
That's when that came to my attention.
Okay. Now, with an accidental discharge like this, you have things called a production report, correct?
Correct.
And that is basically a daily log of what happened that day that might be important.
Mm-hmm.
And ma'am, would you expect that something like an accidental discharge would be put on a production report?
I would like it to be.
With regard to these, do you know if they made it onto a production report?
I do not recall.
Okay.
I would need to see the production reports.
Okay. But in any event, with regard to the second one, doesn't sound like it made it on the report.
I was not aware of it, and I did read every production report.
Whose responsibility in the chain of command would it be to report those accidental discharges?
Anyone on set?
Would the first assistant director have responsibility? In terms of the production report.
So the AD team is responsible for the production report.
Okay.
Yes. If they were not made aware, I don't know how to answer that question.
Oh, okay. So they have to become aware of it.
Yes,
But
somebody would need to let them know in order.
Okay. And if they do become aware of it, do they have a duty then to?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Are you aware whether daily safety meetings were being conducted on set?
Safety meetings were being conducted. They were not every day. They were typically on the days where there was any type of bigger element, special effects, stunts, blanked days, etc.
Okay. And do you know, with regard to safety bulletins, whether those were being attached to the call sheets on a daily basis?
Some were, and some were not, which I found out days after the incident.
You also, during this time, had a COVID. This was October 2021. Mm-hmm. So did you have a COVID protocol?
We did.
And in general, was that pretty much what we all knew at the time, to limit contact, to wear a mask? I mean, what did that entail?
You're testing my memory. We tested. I cannot remember how often. Frequently. Everybody wore masks. We had hand sanitizer everywhere. Everything was wiped down. I think that was about it.
Okay. Did you know whether Ms. Gutierrez Reed was vaccinated or not?
We did not ask for vaccination information from cast and crew.
Okay. And I guess in general, I take it that in general, you wouldn't want a lot of people in a small space if you could help it. Like if there's filming going on in a small building, that's kind of what the COVID protocol was at the time?
Yes. It was not often practical because filming takes place in small buildings.
Sure. But to the
yes.
extent possible, that was the goal?
Yes, that was the goal.
Okay. Your ma'am, just a moment.
Ms. Pickle, do you recall the entire text communication that you had with Ms. Gutierrez regarding the training days?
I would need to review.
Would showing you
Yes.
the entire text thread refresh your memory?
Yes.
I'm going to ask you to review pages 12,201 through 12,205.
Okay.
May I? I'm going to ask her some other questions about the threat.
Those aren't admitted into evidence.
No, I know. I'm refreshing her memory. I just asked if she remembered the thread. She said no. May I? Do you know how to scroll through a Mac?
Yes.
I'm going to hand that to you. I want you to take your time. You're going to review 4 or 5 pages.
Okay.
Did that refresh your memory?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to take that back as we go through these questions. If you need to see it again to refresh your memory, just let me know.
Okay.
May I?
Yeah.
Was your memory refreshed as to the date of the text exchange regarding the training days of Alec Baldwin and Brady? You want me to approach again?
Yes, I did not look at every single date. I'm sorry.
That's okay. May I? And again, ma'am, you are welcome to scroll through.
Do I need to look at every date and have?
I don't.
Okay.
Not necessarily.
These were on the 17th of October, 2021.
So on October 17th of 2021, did you tell Ms. Gutierrez that there would be no more training days?
Yes.
And do you recall the language of her response? Did Ms. Gutierrez respond to you and say, right on?
Yes.
If she's reading from a document not admitted in evidence,
Can I refresh your memory again?
Yes.
No, just don't read.
Okay.
Right.
Do you want me to ask the question again without reading it?
Yeah.
Okay. Did Ms. Gutierrez respond to you and say, right on?
Yes, she did.
That's no.
Oh, I thought that's...
No, just did she respond to you?
Did she respond to you?
She did.
Well, now we've already done it, so just
Okay.
move on.
I want to move to strike that.
It's fine, I'll strike the answer, okay? Question and answer.
Ma'am, do you recall what Ms. Gutierrez's response was to you when you said no more training days?
Right on.
Thank you.
That's fine.
Did reviewing these messages refresh your memory as to whether or not you told Ms. Gutierrez that she would have 10 total armorer days?
Yes, it is confirmed in that text chain that we both knew that there were 10 armor days.
Not 8.
Not 8, 10.
Now, we understand that you, Rust Productions hired Ms. Gutierrez to be armorer and also prop assistant, correct?
Correct.
And did Ms. Gutierrez agree to take on both roles?
Yes.
Even though production stopped on October 21st, had this incident not occurred, production was going to continue, correct?
Yes.
For a couple more weeks, is that right?
Yes.
And was it within the discretion of Rust Productions to continue to increase armorer days if necessary throughout the course of the filming?
Yes.
So just because she was given 10 by October 21st, that doesn't mean that she was going to be limited to 10 for the duration of the filming.
Correct.
You indicated that you were the line producer on this set.
Yes.
Prior to October 21st of 2021, how many times had you been a line producer for a film?
I feel like I should have that memorized.
And you don't have to be exact.
I've been a line producer for more than a decade.
During that decade.
4 to 5 films a year.
Okay. So 40 to 50?
Yeah.
In those 40 to 50 films, can you estimate for us how many of those films had an armorer?
Five or six, to my recollection.
Okay. Are you yourself familiar with firearms and firearm training?
No.
So for the hour that you observed Ms. Gutierrez's firearm training, did you have any experience from which to compare it?
I have sat in on a couple of other trainings.
Okay. Did those trainings include the use of single action revolvers?
I don't know enough to answer that question.
Okay, fair enough. And you indicated on October 21st that there was a delay in filming because of replacing the camera crew, correct?
Correct.
And that filming was delayed for hours, right?
Yes.
And during those hours where filming was not occurring, was Ms. Gutierrez free to go inspect her dummy rounds and do any other work she needed to do?
Yes.
In terms of the accidental discharges, did Ms. Gutierrez bring them to your attention?
No.
Do you know whether Ms. Gutierrez brought the accidental discharges to the attention of anyone in production?
I do not have knowledge of that.
Could Ms. Gutierrez have reported the accidental discharges to production?
Without me hearing about it?
No, just could she report it to anyone in production?
Yes.
Anyone on set could, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Mr. Looper did,
Yes.
correct?
Mm-hmm. You
You were asked some questions about the COVID protocol on set. did the COVID protocol require Ms. Gutierrez to leave the firearm in the church on October 21st and leave the church?
Your Honor, I don't object to speculation, lack of knowledge, foundation.
If
I
you
have
know.
no knowledge. I can't answer that. I don't know.
Well, did you have knowledge of the COVID protocol for the set?
I had knowledge of the one-page document that we had of the basics. As far as what happened on set, that was really not my job.
Okay. The one-page document that you're talking about, did it indicate that the armor needed to be separated from the firearms?
It had no such specifics.
I don't have anything further, thank you.
This witness is excused. Thank you. Counsel?